strong, empowered, authentic.
What's up, Ginger Nation? This is Tosh.
This is Darren, and you are listening to the Authentic
Ginger Podcast. Welcome to the Authentic Ginger Podcast. I'm Tosh Taylor.
And I'm Darren Roach. Welcome, Ginger Nation. Hey, Tosh, I wanted to ask you a quick question. I want to ask you, have you ever been to Bangkok?
No, only in The Hangover Part 3.
Okay, that's two of us. Where is the furthest you've ever traveled?
Ireland.
On today's podcast, we're chatting with Cailtlin Ashworth. She's a writer and an editor. Here's one for you. You're going to love this. Coffee addict.
Love it.
And super adventurer. So I'm really excited to welcome you to the show, Cailtlin.
Thanks for having me.
First things first, let's talk about you, Cailtlin. And you were telling me off mic that you're a journalist, which I think is the coolest thing since sliced bread. As a form of journalist myself, I love that. And I want to know let's talk about little Cailtlin and her dreams and growing up as a redhead before we get into all the fun stuff.
So growing up as a redhead, now I feel beautiful, but growing up as a redhead, I definitely didn't. The beauty standards were blonde, tan skin. The two girls that lived beside me were both tan with blonde hair and Barbies. Every Barbie you would get was like blonde hair, tan skin. On TV, that's what you would see. Looking back on it, I don't remember a single Barbie that had like actual like red hair. Or even dolls that had freckles. So growing up, it was kind of hard, to feel confident. Also, I was wondering if anyone else you've had on the show has had this, but I used to get like really bad nosebleeds when I was a kid. Like I'd wake up and my nose would bleed like so much. I'd have to like run to the bathroom because it's just was bleeding. And my mom had asked the pediatrician, like, oh, she gets these nosebleeds. He said, like, oh, she's just a redhead. Like, that's just a redhead thing. Wow. He brushed it off. You just, have to put some Vaseline in your nose and keep it, he just brushed it off. It was so weird.
That never happened to me, but I have a good friend and both of the parents are not gingers, but two of their three kids are very ginger. And the oldest one, nosebleeds all the time, unexplained. They have no idea why, and they just start out of nowhere.
Like, what about a redhead would make your nose just start bleeding in the middle of the night? I would have like stains on my blanket from it. But I am the only redhead in my family. I have two brothers and a sister, and they all have dark brown hair. My parents both have dark brown hair.
Wow.
Nobody directly has red hair, so I was really like the only one. I'm the redhead in the family. So I didn't have anyone around that looked like me. There's a couple people at school that might have had red hair, but it was really like I was original. And then I would get a lot of attention from older people because I had like red hair. Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm like, okay, then why isn't it in the movies? Why are like on TV, there's, when there's a redhead, it's like Chucky from the Rugrats and he has allergies and braces and glasses. Why is it like that if it's so beautiful?
Right.
I remember that guy. Yeah. Wow. That's a good reference. Love that. In school, were you acceptable to any kind of bullying or made fun of? I know how you kind of mentioned earlier how you felt towards yourself back in those days. But as Cailtlin going through school, did you experience anything that was you kind of thought like, well, this is weird. Why am I being treated like that?
One time, a girl called me. She said, "Oh, what are you, transparent?" Because I have my skin is like white, That was rude. People at my school weren't directly mean, but I did I was into cheerleading and I made the team and at my school, and that was seen as something popular, right? To make the cheerleading squad. Right. And somebody goes, "Oh, it's so great that someone like you made it." I'm like, what do you mean? Like a redhead, I guess. Like, oh, they're all blonde, like, they're all the pretty girls, I guess. It's like, well, you don't think, what I mean?
Wow. What state did you grow up in?
I grew up in Virginia, and then I moved down to Florida when I was 16 with my family. And so we've been in Florida since then.
Okay. A redhead in Florida. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Must be super fun for the sunburns.
Oh yeah, I just got one actually the other day. I should know better.
I know. I say the same thing every spring when the sun comes out. I get like the initial burn and I'm like, damn it. I've been doing this for 39 years. I know to not burn, but here I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you move on obviously to college and journalism, and you have this crazy cool story, I think, about your journalism career. And you're only 31. So you obviously kind of made this move like out of school and bang right into it, right?
It took me a while to get into school because I love to party. So I actually went to cosmetology school first, which
Okay.
I actually didn't have. I never dyed my whole hair
Nice.
throughout cosmetology school, but I kind of did that for a little bit because I was 18, started cutting hair, and then I started going to college, and I realized like I don't want to be in one place because cutting hair, you're at the salon, you build a clientele, and that's where you're at. And for me, I like to be in so many different places and experience so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather was a journalist, and so he kind of said, I traveled, throughout my career. It's really good. You meet so many different people, and that's kind of what really called to me. So I changed my major. I started studying journalism, and that's kind of how it just clicked with me. So out of college, I had a couple internships, but basically, when you're a young journalist, you just have to get a job wherever you can find it. And I found a really good job in Massachusetts at a newspaper up there. And I worked there for about a year and a half, and I was working my ass off. So I was working really hard. I was in my 20s. I'm like, you know what? I want to do an adventure. And I was dating someone at the time who had been to Thailand. So that was kind of like, I was like, you know what? We should go back. You loved it so much. And I had traveled before, but it was just, I had just done study abroad trips. So I had been to Ireland, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, but they were for study abroad trips. And I hadn't really gotten to just be there and kind of just be there on my own. I was there for like studying and with a group.
So once you got your feet wet, where did it take you after that?
I took a break because to go to Thailand, I was thinking about trying to freelance right in Thailand because I wanted to live overseas for like an extended period of time because I had just done some like 2-week trips. And I was like, you know what? I want to live somewhere else in a culture that I don't know. And I had heard of Thailand so many different times. And the guy I was dating at the time had lived there before. And so that is really kind of what, because he was talking about, oh, it was so great. I'm like, you know what? Let's go back. You keep talking about how great it is. I'll figure myself out. But the thing is, looking at it, when you're in the States and you're thinking about going overseas, it's not that easy to see it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go there first. And the safest option was to be a teacher. That's what most people do when they go overseas to work is they work as an English teacher. And there's like a really high demand for English teachers who are native speakers, who are young, and the pay is really good for what it is. I mean, of course, it's lower than what you would get in the US, but when it comes to cost of living, it's really good. You get tons of vacation time. And so I was kind of just sold. Like I decided, oh, you know what? I'm going to become a teacher. But I left with my resumes printed out. Like I had my resumes printed out and my stories printed out because I was like, I know I don't want to be a teacher forever. So I was like, I had a goal in mind, but when I got there, I was so overwhelmed that I didn't give my resume to anyone at first.
And was there a journalistic approach to your thought about going to Thailand? Was there something, that was in your mind that that you thought, well, you know what, if I go over there, I might have a chance to get over there and do some writing and some editing or editor work.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing. I really want to be a foreign correspondent and a backpack journalist. I've always liked the idea of being a backpack journalist, and that was kind of, you know what, I just have to go out there and try it. And I before I went there, I researched like all these different news organizations there that were English language media. there aren't that many options there, basically. But I had done my research first and printed out the resumes and everything. But then I got there and I was like, you know what? I need to live here first. Like, this is so foreign to me. It's literally on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Relax, just live, like, just enjoy it. And then you can get into it. But I took like a class during my time that I wasn't working. And then I started trying to freelance, right?
So now you're an outsider in another country. But you're an outsider that sticks out because, you're pale, your hair is really red. How did people accept you?
People accepted me. It was actually, my hair wasn't a major thing that stuck out. It was my freckles.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of freckles. And that was really what I got the most questions on, was like, what? Like, one of my students said, what are those spots on your skin? I'm like, they're from the sun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I try to explain to my students that my hair is called red, but a lot of people didn't see it as red. They're like, oh, I think it's brown. And if you think about it, everyone has this, like dark brown or black hair. And if they were to lighten it, it kind of turns into a reddish. So for them, they might see it as a brown.
That's actually something we've learned on the show, is that red hair potentially originates from Asia. So that,
oh, wow.
Maybe it's not such a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's interesting. Okay. So you start getting some freelance jobs, right?
Freelancing is actually super hard. I mean, if you don't have the connections, it's hard to kind of get in there. And I did a couple stories at first before I actually found a job writing there. But after like 2 years living in Thailand, I made the decision that I was going to focus primarily on freelance writing and traveling. And I was going to do some, like, basically when you're over there, a lot of people pick up jobs tutoring, doing online teaching. There's like a hustle basically for teachers. Like, you want to travel during your time off. So sometimes you'll pick up all of these gigs to kind of make some money. So I knew how to make money over there without teaching full time. So I was doing some online teaching, doing some like daycare work, just doing like gigs here and there to kind of keep some money. But I was focusing on, okay, you know what? I'm going to try to freelance write, and I'm going to focus on that. But I did a couple stories and the pandemic hit. I was planning on going to South Korea, and I was going to stay there for about a month. And South Korea was the first country to have like out of China to have a huge spike and start like closing down. So I had to cancel that trip. And then Thailand started closing down, and my friends and I were wondering, like, you know what, we can go back to the US. And we had gotten an email from the embassy saying, US citizens, you need to make a decision. Like, you may have to stay in the country for an indefinite period of time because they might close the borders. So we had to make a decision. Are we going to stay here, or are we going to go back? And I mean, I was at the beach, and, we were all going to just quarantine at the beach for a while, and we didn't think it would be that long.
No.
No. We were like, you know what? We'll just spend a couple months at the beach. It's fine. So that's the plan. So I was in lockdown. I had no job anymore. The tutoring gigs were nothing. Luckily, there was online teaching, which had spiked during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I couldn't travel and write, which was my plan. And I ended up, there was an opening at this, one of the top news companies in Thailand is like, they're focused on expats and doing news for a foreign audience. I got a job with them, and I started writing for them. And then like a couple months later, I'm in Bangkok at their office. I become the lead writer. And then I ended up managing a team of writers. We ended up getting a large investment. I mean, during the pandemic was a huge time for news, and especially in Thailand, where like if you're an expat, it's really hard to get the news in English. There was like the Bangkok Post is the major newspaper, but there's some other small ones, but they're kind of focused more on political things. There's a pro-democracy movement, and they really focused on that and the protests. So when it comes to being a foreigner and news that was for a foreign audience, the Tiger, which I was where I worked, was like the main news outlet. We had a YouTube channel and a website.
Wow.
So I did some work for the YouTube. I wrote scripts. I did some of the broadcasts. I did a couple videos for them, and then I primarily just managed the website. I grew a team and I kind of expanded our coverage. I hired translators so that we could translate some information for our readers. You know, and the thing is, when I moved to Thailand, and I was like, at first I wanted to write, people thought like, how are you going to do that? You can't even speak the language there. And I figured it out. I ended up hiring translators. So
that was my question. I was like, how are you gathering the news when you don't speak the language? That's impressive.
Yeah, and it's actually it's really hard to find a job in Thailand that's not teaching. So when people were like, how did you get that? I was like, I just applied and I have, you know, the journalism experience. But a lot of people would ask me, oh, who did you know to get you that? A lot of people like who get another job outside of teaching, they knew somebody who had a connection or something like that. And for me, it's like, no, I just applied there, which was pretty great. But most news outlets will not hire a foreigner unless it's a high up editor. So most of them just hire Thai people unless it's an editor position.
In this entire process that you're taking us through, was there a time when you sort of might have felt, I'm not sure this is the right thing to do, and what's waiting for me at the other side? Were you nervous at all? Like do you get these? Because I mean, I get nervous just thinking about getting a call saying, hey, you're going to Bangkok and you know, from Thailand, whatever it is. I'm just thinking to myself, who's out there that's going to get me? How do I be safe? Like, you know, this is running through my mind as you're talking about all these experiences. Does that ever cross your mind?
Oh, well, okay. One time somebody threatened my visa because, you know, there's some monarchy there. So you cannot say anything about the king that would insult him in any way. So there's really strict defamation laws and laws, you know, protecting statements about the king. And so we kept our coverage pretty neutral, and you know, we don't want to get into that. But I did get somebody who was Thai like messaging me saying that we don't write anything good about him. And she was like, what visa are you on? Are you on a teacher visa? Because you can't write this if you're on that visa. Right. Luckily, I did have the correct visa, but you know, I didn't always.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, there's a transition. The immigration there is like a bit corrupt, and sometimes you have to pay something under the table to get something changed. And especially during the pandemic, people trying to get from one visa to the next, there was a lot of issues there, and a lot of people had to pay a little bit more than what they're supposed to pay.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's the coolest place you've been, do you think?
I would say the coolest, I mean, I love Thailand, but Indonesia is probably the coolest. I mean, they've got the volcanoes, the waterfalls, even snorkeling there is like amazing. That was my favorite. And I went to some craters and did like sunrise hikes, and it was just really beautiful. But to live, I would say Thailand. I like the culture in Thailand better than in Indonesia. But to visit, I mean, Indonesia is beautiful.
So do you have any tips for, you know, people of fair skin and red hair and freckles that are traveling to other countries?
Yeah. So first, so for me, I was in Southeast Asia. And so if you're going anywhere that's going to be hot outside, if you're outdoorsy, you need to bring clothes that are cool, but also cover your skin. And I didn't really bring anything at first. I kind of bought everything there, and I had to figure it out the hard way. But like in Thailand and like other Southeast Asian countries, a lot of people ride, by motorbike. So if you're used to being in a car, you're not going to get sunburned usually in a car unless you have the window down. So for the motorbike, I had to find like this like light jacket that was like pretty airy, but there was a hole for my thumb because my hands would get sunburned. So you had to completely cover up. So completely cover up for like the motorbike trips, but like with a like clothes that like are breathable, you know what I mean? So so I would say if you're backpacking, you have to pack really light. So you have to think about, okay, what is something that I'm gonna like that I need? And that jacket is something that I always need. I usually didn't have a hat, but the thing is, like, you probably want a hat because my hair got a lot lighter. Like if I spent a lot of time on the islands, my hair would get like some blonde highlights. And
Crazy.
I'd rather have my hair a little bit darker, honestly. Also, if you like to go snorkeling, get like a wetsuit, at least the one that covers like at least like that top that covers your arms. Like for the longest time, I didn't have something like that, and I was like, why don't I have this? Because you're if you're in a country by the equator, you're gonna need it. For sunscreen in Thailand, so in Thailand, and I think it's kind of like a lot of Asian countries, the white skin is considered beautiful. But the thing is, a lot of the sunscreen and other products that are sold there might have like something to whiten your skin, kind of it's like whitening, which I don't need to be any whiter. So I would get brands that were that I knew from America, so like Banana Boat, the spray. But the thing is, you're not going to find that all the time. So if you see sunscreen, buy it.
Right.
Because you might go somewhere and you might not be able to find it, and it's like you need it. And the thing is, like, sunscreen over there is the same price, if not maybe probably more, because they're like importing it in. But the thing is, like, say the cost for accommodation in Thailand, like maybe I'll pay like 300 to 500 baht, which is around $10 to $15. And then sunscreen, like a bottle of the spray, will be sold for like 800 baht. So it'd be like twice as much as your accommodation for a bottle of sunscreen.
That's bonkers.
It was like, for me, I'm like, some people would ask to borrow it. I'm like, okay, you can borrow, but like, don't use too much of it because this is like really expensive for me. Like, you guys do not know like how much I have to spend on this.
That's crazy.
What's the craziest thing you ate? Because I saw some worms in there. I saw some things that were moving. Like, what? Take us through that for a quick second. So, what's the craziest thing you ate over there?
I haven't been that adventurous in a while because I had food poisoning quite a few times. So my last like couple years, when I moved to Bangkok, I stopped being so adventurous. I would eat a lot of Japanese food. Yep. Let's see.
So when you're first over there, you're like, okay, I'm going to try everything. Like, screw this shit.
So there's some, there's blood. I forget what it's called, but it's like blood cubes that they sell a lot in their with their food. And I've tried that. I don't like it, but I've tried it quite a few times. Like, do I like this yet? No, I
don't. Not today.
Yeah. Or like chicken's feet. I've tried some of it. I've tried it when it's like off of the claw, but if it's on the claw, it's like I bite it. I'm like, no, I cannot do that. Like there's one soup that like blood is like kind of poured in. And I've had that, but I didn't see the blood. I think that if I saw the blood, I probably wouldn't have had it. Yeah, when it comes to crazy, I didn't get that crazy. I mean, I would try things that my friends had. Oh, one time I had it was like I want to say bee like larva.
Yeah.
Like it was in the comb, but they were like kind of alive and squirming. Like we eat the honeycomb, but this had like the baby bees in it.
Squid or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've had some squid. Yeah, squid's pretty popular, but it's just not my favorite. I'm not like a huge seafood fan. So
Right.
I would have squid sometimes, but it was like not my favorite.
I'm not a fan of anything moving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I've tried the bugs a couple times, but it's kind of like you just try it.
Yeah.
But
You're
I
not going
did
back for seconds.
in when I first got to Thailand, I had my American money saved up and I went to this like 5-star restaurant that I had seen on Netflix, Chef's Table. It's this chef called his name's Goggin,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like the most amazing experience ever. And I couldn't have afforded it, you know, in America. If I had gone in America, like I would never be able to afford the experience. But it was like 25 small dishes. And the way he describes his food, it's like Indian influence. He's from India,
Mm-hmm.
but he says it's like a psychedelic experience for your mouth. So, or for your taste buds.
Wow.
Gingers have sensitive stomachs, which is probably why you had food poisoning so many times.
Is that why? Because I'm like,
there's potential. There's potential.
I had to be really careful. Like my last year in Thailand, I was like really careful about what I was eating. I was even on a meal plan at one point because I had gotten food poisoning quite a few times. And the last time I had to get on a meal plan to like watch what I was eating.
Wow.
So you stuck with pad thai the whole rest of the trip, right?
Well, no, actually, like in Bangkok, you can get anything you want. It's like a hub of, oh my gosh, it's like so much culture is there. And I had a meal plan for a while where it just had healthy food. Some of it was a little Thai influence, but it was like, like rice dishes, but pretty healthy. And then Japanese food has been pretty good on my stomach, except for ramen sometimes. But like sushi's been pretty good.
It's really inspiring, and I really want to thank you for reaching out and finding us the way you did, and I'm really hoping that there's more to the story, which gives me to the next question before we wrap up. What's next?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what's next? Well, I'm trying to be an investigative reporter. In Thailand, I really didn't get to dig deep into anything because it was hard. I can't just request public records over there. Not like in America where I can just go to the police station and ask them any question. Not like that. So I really want to get into like deep reporting, but I'm trying to find a job that's close to my family, and so that's a little trickier, So I'm working on a job, finding that, and then
great.
But I do plan on traveling again, but I'm thinking that I might want to be home for a bit and spend time with everyone.
Where would your next trip take you if you're thinking about it right now? What's that next pin on the map?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, but I feel like I want to go back to Thailand for sure. But I think it's because I just left.
Yeah.
But I've been to Japan and I really want to spend more time there.
Yeah.
But Indonesia, I only went to East Java and Bali, and I want to explore more. I mean, there's like so many islands there. There's so much nature. And while I'm young and have all this, like I'm active, that's the time. Like I'm not going to wait until I'm retired to go there. I need to go when I can hike the volcanoes.
Right, exactly. Or run if it erupts. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
It'll be interesting to see how your career expands now, though, because the states and their limits on journalism are so much broader than the limits you were given there. So it'll be really interesting to see, especially investigative. It's going to change things for sure.
Yeah, I'm ready to like be able to request public documents.
Yeah, what a big difference.
Ask questions. Yeah, I'm ready.
So, okay. Well, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure to not only get to talk to another journalist, but to also get to talk to a Redhead journalist. I think that's pretty amazing. And I hope that you do absolutely amazing things with your future.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you guys too.
And before we go, do you have any social channels that you're willing to give to our audience to have a look at your travels while you're away?
Yeah. I have my Instagram page. It's Cait_Ashworth. So CAIT_Ashworth.
Awesome. That's terrific. Thank you very much for joining us today. And you have been listening to the Authentic Ginger Podcast. You've been listening to the Authentic Ginger Podcast.
Become a part of the Ginger Nation by liking, subscribing, following, and leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This podcast was produced by Tosh Taylor of the Podcast Hub Productions. Find her online at podcasthub.ca.